Absolutely, Ashish.
Yes,
Let's
so
go.
it's exactly 4:30. Since we have global audience, global speakers, so we want to respect the timing of everyone. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining. This is Ashish Gakrey, joint convener of Kolokwi is the name of the brand we have created under the banner of Kalinga University, which is based in Bhubaneswar, India. You will get to know more when I will hand over to Dr. Sanjay Muthal. So this is under the banner of Kalinga University, based in Bhubaneswar, India. Beautiful campus, 25,000 students studying there. And then another body which is Contempore. Contempore is management consultancy, and Dr. Sanjay Muthal is the CEO. And we have started this kind of session since last 6 to 9 months, and every month we are doing this session, especially bringing a global speaker from Southeast Asia region, Middle East Asia, and now Europe region, which is going on. I like to show something. You'll get much idea what we have done in the past. Okay, I'm sure you can see the screen. Yes, can anybody confirm?
Yes, we can.
Yes, so these are the 6 programs we have done it. Okay, the 7th one is going on now. So the first row you can see, this is the Southeast Asia region. So we had a speaker from Indonesia, Hong Kong, Malaysia. Okay, then Singapore, and then Vietnam, Japan, Philippines, likewise New Zealand, Thailand, and all. So that was the Southeast Asia. And then we did it for Middle East. The below one you can see the first and the third. Where a speaker from Dubai, then Bahrain, and other region of Middle East. And the first session of Europe region happened last month, and where we had a speaker from UK, Ireland, and France. And now this one is happening, and we have a speaker from Austria, I would call it, and then we have a speaker from Switzerland, and we have a speaker from UK. So this is what we are able to brought in on one platform, and obviously not to forget a speaker from Switzerland as well. I would call it, this is kind of Euro World Cup HR series going on. Okay, only this one I can call it, because next month Euro World Cup may be over, and we couldn't announce last month because Euro World Cup was not started, I believe, or it was not in much in craze. India, still there are a lot of football crazy, and all over world as well. Yeah. So we have a speaker from all 4-5 locations. So let me just introduce them, and besides that, I would request them to also touch upon, in case they like to share some of the past experience or any achievement and all. So let me begin with so we have a speaker from Geneva, Switzerland, joining, Iyas Seidan, Doctor of People and Culture, Japan Tobacco International. May I request people to go on mute? Okay, I can see. Okay, sorry, I need to stop in between myself if I see people are on mute. Okay, thank you. So Japan, so that was Director of People and Culture, Japan Tobacco International, Geneva, Switzerland. Thanks, Iyas, for joining. Thanks for taking out time. And then Liz Lax, VP People, Bloom Diagnostics. She is joining all the way from Vienna, Australia. She is originally from Australia. And then Meena, Anand, whom I know since last 5-10 years. She is non-executive director, career coach, and CHRO, London, UK. And then we have Sola, UNESCO, senior director, Prosus Group, Germany. And then we have Manoj, Puthan, head customer training services, capability enablement, Nokia, London, UK. Okay, I'd like to share a few more things here, so that we'll get more idea, the kind of background our speaker have. Yeah. Let me begin with Liz. Okay, so Liz has a total 21-year experience. She worked in a GMO corporation. Iyas has a total more than 13-14 year of experience, and he has been with JTI since 2014. Meena, 24 years of experience. She was in Eastern Chart Bank in Southeast Asia, based in Malaysia, heading share services, global business services, I would call it, managing director, HR. She was there for 16 years more than, and she worked in earlier Barclays, UBS. Sola, 25 years of experience. Organization NASPAR, deliver PwC, RBS, Accenture, GSK. Wow. Welcome all Sola. And then Manoj, 19 years of experience with Nokia since 2009 and previous organization UBS Tech-M. So this is all about our speaker, and I'd like to pause here and would like to hand over to Dr. Sanjay Muthal. So let me share the format. What will happen in next 70 minutes, I would call it 70 to 80 minutes. There'll be opening remark by Dr. Sanjay Muthal, who's the CEO of Kontempore Management Consultancy. He will also talk about, Kalinga University and Kontempore in a little bit. Then we will start the panel discussion. It will be handed over to our moderator, none other than Meena Anand, joining from London, UK. And in the end, we will have 15 to 20 minutes for delegates Q&A. We will take from Delhi, but keep interacting in the chat box. Okay, most welcome to a lot of conversation and all. Okay, so would like to hand over to Dr. Sanjay Muthal. Okay, my professional senior buddy, coach, mentor, colleague, I would call it, and he has been in the entrepreneurship since 2013. Worked in a Piramal, Hinduja, RPG, and more than 31 year of experience. Okay, Dr. Sanjay Muthal, over to you now.
Thank you, Ashish. Good evening from India. Morning, afternoon to all the global audiences and my speakers this evening. Meena, Sola, Iyas, Liz, and Manoj. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And we are all raring to hear the demystification of employee experience, as it were, this evening from all of you. At the outset, as I again said, happy to have you with us. This is jointly hosted by KIIT, which is the third largest university in India. It's among the top 10 universities within the country. It has Institute of Eminence status, which is only given to IIMs, but KIIT is amongst one of them. Right from all the facets of engineering, management, legal, law, legal, medicine, all the facets of humanities as well as sciences is taught in this university, promoted by a philanthropist called Dr. Achyuta Samanta, extremely well known for his work with the tribal children. There is a tribal university called as KISS, where the tribal children are given education and purpose of life. You would have seen some of the tribal kids now getting eligible or qualifying for Olympics. Most of them have come from this institution called as Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences. Kontempore, the business I run, essentially into executive search, HR consulting and OD consulting, and we have a product on artificial intelligence. But that's not what this evening is for. This evening is for a great learning session and a great learning experience. With so much wisdom present among the speakers here, and especially wanting to really hear from the other part of the world, and we have all the speakers from Europe essentially this time. It would be lovely to understand the practices, the current thinking on employee experience especially, and people practices in general, as we run this session today. Employee experience. When I looked at Gallup's definition, it says it's a journey that employee experiences before, during, and after his tenure in the organization, and the touch points that he has within his journey within the organization. So if that is the definition of employee experience, clearly objective of employee experience has been engagement, performance, creating culture, enabling culture in the organization. I think for me, any people initiative and especially employee experience starts with aligning your culture and values, rather aligning your employees to the culture and values and mission of the organization. That's the starting point for any and especially employee experience. So when that employee experience is created through various means, employee first, work-life balance, L&D culture, onboarding process, so on and so forth, how do employees see and experience that in an organization? Employee would experience that from feeling valued, psychologically feeling important, getting autonomy at work, good work-life balance, open communication channel, so on and so forth. But I'm not going there. For me, the three pillars of employee experience are clearly engagement, enablement, and empowerment. Engagement is, a lot of work has happened in engagement, and it's been talked about, and we all of us have practiced that in the organization with an eminent objective of being retention of people. I really think that enablement is the key pillar of employee experience, because this is where, to what extent employee feels that they need to do a job, what they are doing that job, all that they need to do a good job is well provided for. And empowerment obviously is, everything, problem solving, decision making authority to do the job well, and employees are allowed to speak up. If 3 E's are the pillars of employee experience for me, essentially, therefore, employee experience is nothing but part of your values and culture in the organization. And all of us know culture in organization is top down, it is never bottom up. And therefore, employee experience must be championed and have the sponsorship of top management, including the board. If it is not, then it will become a transactional initiative which people will see through and will fall off. So if it is not being felt or experienced, what is experience? Experience is when people feel what they see, when people emote to what they see, when people engage with what they see and hear in the organization. And if that feeling, that emotion is not part of the glue that employee experience creates, then it's bound to fail. But I think in last 10 years, good amount of work, especially last 5 years, have happened in the employee experience across the world, including in India. So we had engagement, and I'm saying engagement, enablement, and empowerment, 3 put together, creating the edifice for employee experience. Employee experience is something which is prior to joining, during the tenure, and after the tenure in the organization. So all was going well. life was beautiful. Organizations were heading to their North Star by the vision, values, and the strategic initiatives in respective organization. In that beautiful stream of flow that organizations were, something happened in towards 2019 end. A very tiny virus was released in that flow. And it completely changed the way we looked at our lives, our work relationships, and perhaps the world itself. I fondly like to call it as BC, AC, and DC. Before COVID, after COVID, and during COVID. Before COVID, we all were into top gear. Organizations were booming on the performances. We have had challenges in 2008 downturn. The global economy was kind of showing good signs, barring a few blinks here and there. But one tiny virus came along and destroyed the entire edifice of businesses, including the way we were managing people. Some of us, especially in countries like from where you come, where organizations and the businesses were digitally advanced, felt not much impact. But in many countries like India, we had huge challenges in first 3 to 4 months in terms of even how do you adjust to the new norm? How do you digitize the processes? How do you enable work from home? And especially where brick and mortar organizations, this was a huge challenge. And therefore we didn't know what hit us. In this process, when this happened, the first impact or the maximum impact within the organizational context was on employee morale. There was fear, there was uncertainty, and hence there were well-being and there were issues relating to mental well-being. We saw lots of sectors where thousands and hundred thousands of jobs were lost. Organizations were trying to come up in whichever way they could come up in terms of business continuity plans. Some of them did well, some of them struggled to do. Fortunately, we got it around. Leadership came at the center stage, which was always there, but came into a complete microscope in terms of the values, vision that you created in AC. How are you demonstrating those in DC during COVID? You went to the town by saying that people are my competitive advantage. And when push came to shove, where did you exploit redundancy as your first option? Or did you look at some other options before you got into people redundancies? These are all cultural issues. These are all values issues. Organizations responded differently to different, organizations responded very differently to the same virus and impact that it had. go out in that stressful situation to our people, to our stakeholders, by showing same concern, love, affection, trust. That was part of your DNA, so you propounded. And I think that brought to the center stage the whole leadership at the fore. And in this journey of DC, one function or one area of business rediscovered, and I'm kind of saying this with a kind of quote unquote, a due place under the sun, and that was HR function. Because CEOs wanted a trusted buddy with him who will take the CEO through this mayhem of people, anxiety, stresses, and its impact on the entire outcome and output of the organization. And I think people leadership was extremely central to what we experienced during DC. And kudos to all the HR colleagues who really played that role extremely well. Now, if established models were challenged in DC, AC is completely throwing up a new challenge. Because we are now saying the model that existed for a flesh and blood organization, brick and mortar organization, how do I apply that to virtual organization? How do I create employee experience for a person who's sitting at home with his family in his shorts and t-shirt versus an employee who was coming to at work and I could easily deploy all my engagement and experience strategies because he was physically here. Hybrid work clearly is the model to go ahead with. Are we prepared for that? How will employee experience pan out in the new normal, in the AC area, after COVID area? Are some of the things that one is really today flustered with. And I'm hoping that today is our conversation with the experts that we have from Europe and will be so ably facilitated by Meena. We will really see some pointers at the end of our conversation as to how do you deal with hybrid model and employee experiences that will be our competitive advantage as we go ahead in the market. So I think with doing all this, one thread which is common seems to be the culture of the organization. Culture of the organization is about leadership, is about people championship, and is about nothing but people, people, and people. And if leaders in whatever level sphere can show the level 5 leadership, especially under the stress that we went through, and still come champion, because every employee today is stressed out. Every person who is coming back to your work still has anxieties. But having said so, it further is asking him, or he's in the quest of finding purpose and meaning to their lives. And organizations, through their employee experiences model, those who offer them that purpose and meaning to their lives, these employees will hug these organizations. Perhaps where they don't find that congruence, they will not love those organizations and may separate from those organizations. That's my submission. And therefore, if you're to deploy level 5 leadership and ensuring that we have the employee experience as the center of our people strategy or engagement, then I think the level 5 leaders will have to be what I call display servant leadership, which was propounded by Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela. And I think if that were to happen, my experience has been such organizations go through any strife, any stress, and still come out conquerors because the leaders serve with only one purpose: Satya, Seva, and Prem. Truth, service, and love. I think if that were to happen, we will see a much, much better world and beautiful workplaces that we are going back to work with now. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I thought I'll put some of these as a context to our discussions today. And I have real pleasure now to welcome Meena to take over the session from me. And I'm happy around to listen to all of you. And with your permission, Meena, if I get some compelling, then I may butt in with your permission. Thank you so much. Have a great session.
Thank you,
Over to
Doctor. Yeah.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you, Doctor. So like to hand over to Meena. Sorry, Meena. So yes, Meena was career coach, non-executive director, and CHRO. And Meena, we keep hearing about engagement. We were hearing about engagement. New buzzword has come: experience. Would like to hear from all of you what's the global experience of the panelist on employee engagement. Over to you. Thanks so much.
Sure. Thanks, Ashish, and thanks Sanjay for setting the scene. You covered a lot in that. So we had everything from a definition of employee experience to looking at 3 pillars of employee experience: the AC, BC, and DC, and nomenclature, which is super helpful. You talked a lot about culture. And employee experience is really embedded in the culture of an organization, and that as part of COVID and what's been happening, that HR have really emerged as the heroes of the pandemic. So really interesting. And before we hear from some of the other speakers, I just thought I'd play a little bit more of a critical lens to the debate. So we have an amazing panel. Ashish has talked a lot about the kind of panel from different perspectives and geographies. We also come from the agenda from different angles. So we are HR professionals, and there's some kind of business leads amongst us as well. But we also have lots of experts actually that are participants. So feel free to use the chat facility. Ashish is kind of helping to kind of monitor that for us. And Sanjay, I don't mind you at all if you kind of butt in, because I really want to make sure that the 40 odd people that we've got on the call today actually get the most out of the session. So I'm going to start opposite to Sanjay. I'm going to start with a little bit about COVID. You can't really have any conversation these days without explaining a little bit about COVID. I'm actually going to talk about some of the things that have occurred to me from a UK perspective around COVID and how the world of work is kind of changing. So Sanjay talked about hybrid working, and I think what it really means from a principal perspective around hybrid working is that it's not thinking about, space is not allocated to an individual anymore. So you don't have your own desk, you don't have your office, it's not about individuals anymore. It's really about the activity that you're doing. So for example, if you are recently joined the organization, the space that you need for induction is probably going to be outweighing even the CEO sometimes. So that's a real kind of change. I think we're also starting to think about, when do you have face-to-face meetings, and when don't you? So for example, I'm doing quite a lot of coaching at the minute. Typically coaching would be done in person. Actually, people are now looking at using Zoom, FaceTime, whatever. And I think the third thing is really about the impact that COVID is happening on the employee population. So in the UK, we have furlough ending soon. The prediction is that, we'll have 5.5% unemployment, unprecedented in the UK for a long time. If I look to Asia, the prediction is that 80 million jobs will be lost, with 25 million people actually falling under the poverty line. The divide between rich and poor is set to increase. Like research would suggest that all of the diversity initiatives that we put in place, so focusing on gender, focusing on LGBTQ, focusing on Black and ethnic minorities in the UK, are really going to be severely disrupted as a result of COVID and the kind of AC world that Sanjay is describing. All sorts of boundaries are blurred. The obvious one is the kind of work and home boundary, but also role boundaries. A lot of parents have to be teachers as well. So there's a lot of kind of role and blurred boundaries. And also what's important to people is changing. What might be important an hour with your child in the morning that you used to use for the commute. And then lastly, I think I wanted to just talk about, the new respect and recognition we have for different roles across different industries. So, in the UK, there was a lot of respect and recognition for the NHS workers, for teachers. And I think there will be a divide between roles where you have to go into work, you're compelled to go into work, or what the front line. And that could be like porters in a hospital, it could be tellers in a bank, it could be people in the supermarket that actually have to stack the shelves. So I think there's going to be a real divide between individuals who are on the front line and those that are not. And all of those things actually have impact on the employee experience. And so just moving to employee experience, as I said, I'm going to play the more, Sanjay was talking about the really positive aspects. I'm going to be slightly critical of the agenda. I'm kind of saying, well, is it just the new label? Really, is it just that, Ashish talked about employee engagement. Is it any different from that? Is it any different from employee satisfaction before employee engagement? I don't know. Hopefully we'll have a chance to kind of talk about that. Or is it just about supporting hybrid working? I know that's really topical for a lot of organizations, but surely employee experience has to be more than just thinking about hybrid working. And Sanjay mentioned this, if there's no employee workplace, is employee experience even a thing? So, so my take on this is, yes, that, employee experience is linked to employee engagement, but it's very different too. Employee engagement, as I see it, is just a moment in time. Typically it'll be an employee engagement survey. It's a snapshot in time, whereas employee experience has, as Sanjay's kind of talked about, is the whole kind of life cycle, employee life cycle, from when you come into, when you start working to when you finish working, from when you start working in a day to when you finish in a day as well. So and I'm going back to my old organization to talk about my definition of employee experience. So I see it as a series of moments that matter, and some of those moments that matter can be prescribed and really set out. So your typical HR employment lifecycle processes, so onboarding, recruitment, the way you manage performance, the way you exit an employee, are all moments that matter, but you can actually have a lot of structure to them based on the values and culture of your organization, like Sanjay's outlined. I think the less controllable ones, and probably COVID has given us a lot more of these less controllable ones, is these kind of micro moments. So it could be, if I've got an issue with my payslip, what is the process and what's the employee experience for solving that for me? Or if I've got a grievance, you know, the fact that it's taken 3 months to investigate, again, is all part of the employee experience. And so, and some organizations, a lot of organizations, sorry, not even some, a lot of organizations use base principles to kind of set out what employee experience actually means to them. What is it that's going to be really important about the experience that our employees have? And so Sanjay talked a lot about the culture and values. Absolutely, it's probably going to be driven and directed from that. But things like, you know, some more kind of meta themes to kind of think about is personalization. You know, a lot of it the kind of same approach, a sheep dip approach that we used to use for training, for the way we run processes, is just not going to work anymore. People expect personalization. Like the ads that you get on Facebook are totally personalized to, you know, what's important to you. It's also about other kind of principles is flexibility, democratization. So a lot of training organizations have done is actually democratize learning, so anybody can access any single course that they want to. But yeah, so there's just some of the principles that some of the organizations I've worked with have used, but I'd love to hear more about the principles that your organizations have used. So just to kind of set the scene a little bit, you know, a little bit about COVID, what's happening in the world of work, and you know, the impact that it's having in shaping employee experience. So let's move. So that's kind of set the scene a little bit. Let's move to our real speakers, that are the real practitioners in the room. So I'm going to go with I'm going to go in the sequence that the program has outlined. So that means Sola, that's you that gets to go first. So okay. Yeah, let's hear a little bit from you in terms of, you know, your experience with employee experience and COVID.
Oh, thank you. What a great session so far. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay. Thank you, Meena, for your contribution so far. Really excited. I did observe something, Meena, that throughout everything you said, you definitely intentionally didn't use the word technology. And as a technologist, I think I will bring the balance to that conversation. I mean, employee experience is, in my view, is about how you encounter, observe, or feel the culture of an organization. How does somebody encounter that? And how does that now happen when in the middle of COVID, I basically changed my team? 80% of my team left and I brought in 80% of my team back in. Some of them I've never met in person. They're now in my team, they've been onboarded and they're already producing, they've already done a performance review for them. So we're in a new world, right? In a new world where actually it's not, like you said, coming back to the office, but it is about how do you engage a team remotely, hybrid, or whatever the outcome will be. And the reality that because of COVID, the world has truly become global. Like it was always global, but COVID has really put the lens on it. And I think for me, the other element of it, I think Dr. Sanjay said earlier that HR is the hero of COVID, which I agree to some degree, but actually it's technology that's the real hero. Right? Because without technology, we couldn't have done what we're doing. Like we couldn't have done this Zoom meeting without technology. And now all of a sudden in our vocabulary today is the concept of Zoom or a Google Meet, or it's almost like it's the new swear word. Like, have you done a Zoom today? Like I do about 8 or 9 a day, right? That's just now where we meet and engage. And actually our employee experience, how they experience the culture, particularly for new people, is actually through the lens of a computer. Now the question is, what technologies do we now have in place to kind of enable that onboarding process, to make that process a uniquely powerful experience? Because now we're not like where we were before, where you come to a room and you enjoy a nice, a nice pool table, free lunch, free drinks. You know, most of those companies have said we're working from home indefinitely. So actually, what is now the culture that you're presenting to the people around you? I love that point around moments that matter. And actually, you now have to count those moments that matter, not waiting for an end of year review, but almost on a week by week, month by month, identifying those moments that actually matter. I mean, they would say that if you have the right employee experience, you will increase profitability by 25%. But I would say actually, there's another twist to that. Actually, you have to have the right talent to have the right experience to give you that kind of output. So it's not just about the employee experience, because if you have an employee that's not talented or is not willing to put its 100% in, they won't actually give you that profitability. So I think COVID has made us really think about, who do we have on our team? Who can we count on? Do we trust them to be at home, not online for 8 hours, and expect them to deliver? So trust is very important. Or do I have to keep slacking you every 5 minutes? Oh, are you working on that yet? Have you finished that yet? Are you going to deliver that yet? Or can I step back and say, look, I trust you to get the job done, and actually we become more output driven rather than work task driven. So, I mean, I could say a lot more, but I guess the other panelists to kind of give the opportunity. But I think for me, I would call out the fact that technology, data, analytics, insights, these are all part of how we really truly measure employee experience. And I'm sure there's nobody on here that hasn't done one of those employee engagement surveys. And the question is, how honest are you going to be on the first one as opposed to the second one, right? So actually, we're in a whole different way of engaging assessing how employees are engaging. But I think ultimately, for any organization, it's still going to be output driven rather than task driven. So that's my intro.
Thanks, Sola. Love the idea of experience an organization through the screen. Totally. You know, couldn't have put it better. It's such an interesting take on it. And the whole definition about encountering and observing the organization. Love it. So let's move on to our next speaker. And Iyas, I can see you.
Yes,
there.
Correct. This is Iyas. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, guys. I mean, you have covered a lot of aspects in employees' experience. Now, the way I look at it, first, the definition itself, I second Sanjay with his definition. In fact, everything that employee feels or experience or think, even sometimes, we counter it as employee experience. Now, one of the things that we are working on it to make like really great employee experience is that we start from the day the candidate click on applying to the job until the day they receive their settlement, their final settlement. So this is really important to think about their lifetime during their lifetime during that period in working. Indeed, COVID-19 has changed the way we think, has changed the way we operate, it changed the way we even look at challenges and several challenges. Now, from our side, I would say in JTI, before COVID-19, we were started actually to apply many concepts like agile and work remotely, etc., etc. So when COVID-19 hits, we found ourselves, actually it helped us to expedite our processes and our plans. Now, from my side, I would like, when I think about employee experience, I think about safety model. And safety model, technically, it was developed by Dr. Leonie Hull. It stands for security, where you need to provide the employees the consistency, the commitment, certainty, and autonomy, to create the autonomy for employees, where they need to feel control over their environment, fairness with our employees, esteem, where our employees need to be regarded, and we are looking at both intrinsic and extrinsic motivations, and trust, of course, where this is where we also, as Meena mentioned, about diversity and inclusion in general, about minorities, how we look at different profiles, different employees' profiles. this is where we need each and every employee to feel belonging, to belong to that environment, and this is really important for us. Eventually, our employees across the globe, they have different personalities, they have their own biases, they have their own strengths, etc. And this is something we need to consider. During COVID-19, actually, and during our transformation process in the organization, what we have done is that we reduced hierarchy, we reduced, I would say, reduced the spans of controls, and we reduced layers. So that reduces bureaucracy, and the decision making is started to be faster for the organization, and that impacted positively on the employee experience overall. We also have some interventions like agile ways of working, new ways of working, and of course, across all technologies that we embedded to help employees to feel belongings. Of course, communications with employees is key here. The way you assess their performance is key as well. It has to be consistent, it has to be fair, it has to be on spot. This is really another important aspect of employee experience. So when you look at employee experience in general, I mean, whether before or during or after COVID-19, we are talking about similar concepts, but different tools or different enablers. But the target or the principle or our goal out of it is to make great experience for our employees. Like my colleague just mentioned, technology helped the employee, helped actually organizations and employees to communicate more, to be close, etc., etc. Yet it created some burdens on them. I mean, before COVID-19, you have this, we have meetings, for example, or work from 8 to 5, let's say. But after COVID-19, you have from 8 to 8, some employees. And this is created like some negative notions and increased actually issues in mental health. And this is another aspect where organizations need to look at it, the employees' well-being, employees' mental health. We have a lot of practices that I will share later on, but it's important, and the key message here is that regardless of the tool you are using, regardless of the setup you are using, you have to take into consideration two things. First, the context. First, where is the employee is located, whether in developed country or emerging country. Every country has different context. This is one of the things because I'm mentioning that because the experience will be varied. The second part is that to look at it as holistically, to look at employee experience holistically, from the work itself to their feelings, to their mental health, to their work-life balance, to their profiles. Everything needs to be taken into consideration. Thank you. Over to you, Meena.
Yes, thank you. You have such a broad definition of employee experience, and including the way employees think. That's pretty broad. And I love the idea of fairness as sort of the principles that you're adopting, and how important context actually is in thinking about employee experience. I really appreciate that. So let's kind of move on. Liz, can we hear from you?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, also for the very inspiring insights. And yeah, I would have to mirror everything that has been said till now. The definition for me, as I say, is everything that everyone has mentioned already. For me, it's also, I think about already from the candidate experience, and I actually even think before that, the employer branding of a company, because the minute a potential colleague is looking at our website, looking at our jobs page, that for me, employer branding already starts the whole employee experience. And then it is right through even to post someone leaving and having an alumni set up. And if a company is large enough to actually implement an alumni process system, so that you mean, again, we have people that leave companies and they come back after years. So if we can think of employee experience as really a cycle that never stops. And so that, for me, I always break it up into employer branding. You have the candidate experience, then you have the employee actual experience while they have the life at the company, and then the alumni, and all of that continues in a cycle. I'm lucky enough to work in an organization that is, we're a startup. Pre-COVID, we were at around 20 people. Since COVID, we have onboarded 30 extra people, and we've still got many roles open. So we did a lot of remote onboarding. The company is fully digital, and pre-COVID, so very much the sort of the BC stage was, we had a hybrid approach already in place. And so we had people could choose that they could do up to 2 days a week at home and 3 days in the office. And of course, then the DC time, during COVID with lockdowns, we had to go into full remote working. It wasn't a huge change for our people because they were already set up. They already, were used to the home office. Of course, though, the fact that you were forced to do the home office and you didn't have the choice of whether I want to do home office or come in, that certainly had a psychological effect. And the whole, as we've mentioned too, COVID is stressful. People with families, people with children, people in small apartments. How do I actually manage day to day and still keep my job and stay healthy, and that everyone around me stays healthy? We also have a very diverse team. So as Ashish mentioned, I'm based in Vienna, originally from Australia. Our company is, the people headquarters is here in Vienna, and of the 50 people, we have 28 different nationalities. And it's about half in Europe and half out of Europe. So that's an additional stress where people couldn't travel. And we do a lot there then of making sure that there's a lot of support to the leadership group to make sure that they've got what they need to, that number one, they're comfortable, that they're feeling psychologically safe, and that we as a company are providing what they need to then further support their team members to make sure that they reach out on an ongoing basis. Other initiatives that I can recommend that I have done at the last company I was at, and I have done at this company, one of the first things I've done is change the branding of human resources to either people or people and culture. As the HR professionals, we in a company are responsible for ensuring or enabling and facilitating good employee experience, the building, the maintaining, the demonstration of values and culture that the company wants to have, that is actually happening. And for me, and especially my past two companies, I thought human resources is actually goes against what we're talking about in employee experience, because a human should not be seen as a resource. And for me, the branding was a big thing. To change it to people or people and culture really shows then everyone that that's what we're here about. And it's about integrating the business with the employees and having a unified and aligned approach. And something that Sanjay mentioned in his introduction that's extremely important, I think, before thinking about any initiatives at the employee level or even at the mid-management level, we in HR or in people have to be courageous enough to be able to challenge the executive team, the board, the top leadership team, to make sure that they are fully aligned on what is employee experience and how, and that's important to an organization, and also to be brave enough to say, okay, yeah, everyone, I mean, I can talk about the startup world, for example, where everyone says we want to keep the startup culture as, as we grow, or even those more established companies say, yes, we should bring in this startup culture of like pool tables and foosball tables and bean bags and everything. It's not for everyone. So I think a good HR professional has to have that honest discussion with the top management team to be able to say, what is it we want to communicate? What is it we want to have as our actual values? And then to be aligned on that and to make sure that that is lived through everyone. and also to be brave enough to say to the executive team and the board, to say, it's great to say you want empowerment, for example, you want the people to be engaged, you want them to be enabled, but how are we doing it? And if we're not doing it, then, as Sanjay also mentioned at the beginning, all initiatives will fail. And yeah, so that's the main things I want to say here. And it also, also to reinforce the trust part. It's interesting to hear many organizations saying exactly the same thing. When we went into COVID, many organizations didn't want to allow home office because there was the trust factor of, will people perform? Will people work at home? And then during COVID, it showed that actually people are more productive. People are feeling that it's easier to balance their work life, to spend more time with family. And I always find it an interesting discussion, and I've had this discussion with many in the HR community and also senior management of other companies. I'm very lucky. I have a very good executive team and board that are very aligned with what we're all talking about here. Where it's interesting that where the trust isn't there, why did we recruit these people? Often we have such a rigorous recruitment process and onboarding process, but then as soon as they come on board, we don't trust that they're going to be adults and want to perform. So yeah, on that point, I will hand back over to Meena.
Thanks, Liz. And I think you broadened the definition even, or the experience even further by looking at employer branding as well as alumni networks. And just the benefits of working in a startup environment, kind of being able to kind of shape the agenda. It's interesting, the productivity point, because I remember on a similar session like this about 2 years ago, I remember being asked a question about productivity, and I was almost hesitant to say, you know what, it's actually increased. But yeah, it's certainly, two years on or whatever. Yeah, it really is. It really has changed. Productivity has increased as a result of COVID. May not be always a good thing though. So on to our last speaker. So we've heard from 3 people, professionals so far. Manoj, I know you've been a people manager in the past, but it'd be really good to get your perspective in your current line manager role.
Yeah, thanks so much, Meena. So I know I've been kind of also seeing some comments about the profile of the speaker. So maybe if it just helps for a minute for everybody on the call. So I work for Nokia and I'm based in the UK. Currently, I'm heading up one of our business lines for customer training services, and also I look at the capability part of it for our services business. Of course, in the past, I've done roles of leading talent development and learning and capabilities and all of that. So just if it helps from a profile standpoint. Look, I think going last always helps because you don't have to say much, right? Because you can just say, I agree with everybody and I can wrap it up here. But I try to bring in a different dimension. And of course, needless to say, whatever the great speakers and, Sanjay and everybody here he has mentioned, I think it's absolutely what I feel, I see around me, and what I think in our company also we endeavor to do. But for me, when we look at employee experience, the first question, like what you triggered off, Meena, to ask is, did it just come in, or was it always there, right? Because how can we not have an employee experience, in any organization? It's always there. Probably it is latent, and when you have crucible experiences like of COVID, it comes to the surface even more, right? So for me, it's almost like a living process, and I know it's probably a more philosophical way of looking at it, but it is a kind of a living process where, and I don't necessarily also believe it's a linear way of saying, from X stage to Y stage. Of course, it covers the whole gamut of it, but it has to be an everyday process, because the way you and I experience things is not based on saying I'll experience this at that point of time and this at no, every moment your experiences change because the environment around you is kind of feeding you with things around. So for me, the whole environment that one creates, the conducive environment that one creates around, determines the experience of that individual. Now, of course, technology has a role to play in it, absolutely. And working for a technology company that connects people, I can tell you how critical it is. but it's much more beyond that, right? For me, it's also in terms of leadership. And I think Sanjay also kind of brought that up front. For us as well in Nokia, I think one of the key things we focus on is really around leadership, right? And how leaders listen and really consciously listening, right? Not just kind of listening for the sake of it, but really consciously listening and then providing that psychological safety for people in the organization to be able to express themselves, right? Because at the end of the day, even a simple question, and there are meetings where I've started to change the tone of my discussions with my teams, right? So I don't ask the question, how are you doing? I start by asking, how are you feeling? Because I think there's a huge difference between those two questions, right? Because when you ask the question, how are you doing? Typically you get the answer, yeah, I'm doing all right. And everybody's trying to kind of balance it out. But when you ask the word feel, it just kind of opens up, the whole discussion. And I think, especially over the last year and a half, in providing that psychological safety and asking these questions has meant a lot for people, right? Because most of these are in the simplest of things. Yeah, you can create wonderful technology, you can create great things around you, but personally, I've experienced also the best times I've experienced about an organization's value is in the smallest of things, right? I mean, where I've valued that particular interaction or the gesture, and that makes me stay on. I've been with Nokia for 12 years. I can tell you when I joined the company, I didn't think I would last more than a few years into it, but I mean, when I look back now, the range of experiences that they were not big things. They were smallest of things which the leaders did for me, or in terms of the ethos of the company. So for me, also to define and put an employee experience in a bucket is also very difficult. So I would not even aim to do that, right? So and of course we are moving into this hybrid workplace and all of that, even in Nokia. But the important thing is not to kind of jump the gun and say, oh, yes, we have to do this for our employees. Again, I step back and say, we need to listen. And over the last year, we've actually listened to all our employees. We've taken bottom-up feedback saying, how has it been for you, right? What are the challenges you've gone through over the period of time? What would you want to happen? So this kind of a bottom-up view in also creating our hybrid workforce model, which we just launched actually a few weeks back, is a fact of that, right? Saying that you're listening to the employees, you're catering to the needs, you're also bringing in the why aspect more strongly. So because I lead a business line, I'm closer to the customers, and and all of that, I can tell you, a large part of the employee experience is also determined on why are they doing a certain job and what does it mean from an organization point of view. So if you're not able to connect the dots between employee experience and customer experience, I think that's also not going to fly sustainably, because everybody wakes up in the morning and comes to work because they clearly know what they're contributing to. How does that add up? For example, in Nokia, we have a very simple purpose. We create technology that helps the world act together. And that's a very simple philosophy, but that itself is a great motivator for everybody to kind of come up and say, look, I mean, what I'm doing today is valuable, not just the work I do, but it helps, people around. So I think the leadership role to be able to articulate that, communicate that, and engage the teams with all of that is absolutely essential. So for me, I think I don't believe employee experience is somewhere out there, the holy grail. It's there always. It's always been there. I think the more conscious we are as individuals, and like Liz was mentioning about the words as well, about human resource and people. We changed our organization's name called People. So we no more call it as HR or anything. We have the People organization. That's simple as that. So those smallest of things can make a huge impact on how the perception, the experience, and the reality of employees and how we act, think, and do things, right? I mean, think, act, and do things around the organization matters a lot. And for me, those are the small vibes which will add up. Of course, you need the foundation, you need the technology, you need the best of the stuff going around. All that is needless to say, but I leave it at that, Meena. I think probably for me, again, all that the speaker said is fantastic, but also I think we also have to be conscious that, it's well within our reach, right? It's just about making sure that you do some of these basics and then connect the dots between the why, what, how, and just make it easy for people to do their daily work, right? And by the way, the other thing, which just the last point, I would leave it as this whole notion of work-life balance, right? It's a big misnomer, and I've never believed in that throughout my whole. And I know I'm kind of challenging the notion a bit, but I think we've we've brought now work into our homes over the last year and a half, even more. And I think it's been very clear that you cannot have an employee experience if you don't have people who are not passionate about the work they do or don't like the work they do, right? So this whole wall that we try and create between work and life just adds more pressure on the employee. So the more seamless you make it, the more you integrate them, and inclusive way of engaging with the employees, that's going to drive your experience and sustainable way of living in an organization. So for me, organization is almost like a living process, right? So that's why I call it a living process, because that's what it is. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts, and then happy to share more later.
Thanks, Manoj. Really interesting in terms of it, describing it as always there, which it is. It's just about potentially curating, what that looks like, and the real focus on leadership again. So you've had a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different views, a lot of different definitions of employee experience. Before I go to asking the panel some questions, is there anything, if you're one of the participants, is there anything that comes to mind for you that that's resonated from you for you, or is there anything that you really particularly want to ask of the panel? And so while you're thinking about that, I'm sure one of the things that you're all interested in is intervention. So what kind of interventions have worked for different organizations? So perhaps let's perhaps start there. And I think Iyas, you'd mentioned that you'd referenced that you'll talk a little bit more about intervention. So I'm going to start with you. What are some of the interventions you've used and that have been really helpful for your organization? Yeah, so there?
Liz, you are there?
Hello?
Iyas, are you there?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I can.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so tell us about some of the interventions that are happening in your organization and what's been working well.
Yes, you're on mute. Can you check audio?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yes, carry on.
So
Thanks.
what we have done is that we reduced the spans of controls and we reduced layers. We increased spans of controls and reduced layers to make higher and speeder, faster decision-making process. This is one of the things that we have done for the employee experience in general. The second thing that we applied agile concept within the organization. So this is something impacted very well on the way they think, the way they act, like when we look at work, we look at it as an activity. We don't look at it as place or time. So this is one of the things that is making our employee experience, or improving, I would say, our employee experience, and impacted them very well. We have created also improved, I would say, the onboarding plan, programs that we have. And finally, one of the things that we have done, I would say, new performance review. It's not annual anymore, so it's monthly based. We put more responsibilities on the line manager. I mean, it's, you see, our job as people and culture is to provide guidance and to facilitate processes. Now the line manager is accountable and responsible to take these experiences and to take these practices to the employees. And this worked very, very well. Actually, now we can see the results now in the organization.
Great. So there's quite a lot of interventions that you put in place and changes you've made.
Yes.
Cool,
And
that's
again, as
helpful.
I mentioned, COVID-19 actually, I mean, if there is an upside for COVID-19, it was that expedited these processes and these practices.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about others? Liz, Sola, Manoj, some of the interventions perhaps that have worked well in your organization?
Yeah, I can jump in if you like. I mean, as
Go
I
ahead,
mentioned
please,
before,
yeah.
we're a startup, so we probably have, it's a lot easier to bring in a lot of things from the very start. Everything that Iyas has mentioned, we also have in place. So we have also a lot of agile processes and mindset in the company. And we have a lot of, so even though we have a hierarchy, it's very flat and we don't practice that there's a hierarchy there. So we have, like, for example, a weekly leadership meeting. This is also part of everybody's onboarding. So the logbook for the meeting minutes and the agenda is shared with everyone in the team, every employee. And we also proactively remind them that it's their responsibility to go in there on a weekly basis in the afternoon after we've had that meeting, so they can keep up to date with what the status is on everything, that they have to reach out to anyone, even if it's an executive, to discuss anything in more detail if they have questions or they're curious. And we also have a very rigorous onboarding plan. So from day one, it's goal setting, it's onboarding plan. We have everyone approaching them, the people team as well, continuing to ask for feedback. What are we doing well? What could we do differently? So to really from day one show that there is this feedback culture, and that we want people to speak up, and that people can challenge, and that people can say if something's not going right. We do have an employee satisfaction survey that we do on a yearly basis, and we make sure that we take it seriously, so that it's actually ongoing on a year. So the actual survey is done at the beginning of the year on the previous year. And in the first quarter, we do a lot with then sharing the results of that, talking about what improvements do we need to do, how can we do those, working with the leadership team. So to work with their departments and take from the company perspective, take it down to the team level to say, how does this resonate for you guys? What is there from a team level that can be improved? We also have a very rigorous, so a very set and structured goal setting and performance review process. We recommend doing it on a quarterly basis, but we leave it to the teams to decide what works for them, because we are a complex organization. We have everything from academics to software engineers, hardware engineers. We have regulatory people. So we have like a mini organizations. And for example, software is doing agile and 2-week sprints, but in the finance team, they will have 6-month goals. So it's up to the teams to decide what works for them. So it's taking these tools, but very much tailoring it to what works and what's going to be bringing the best results. And then the only formal part we have then that we do expect from a company perspective and from the people organization is that at the end of the year, we need to get the reviews back to then sort of do the whole review cycle. And the other thing we also did do, as I mentioned earlier, that we already had the home office hybrid policy in place, and we will continue to do that after COVID. As I said, many people were forced though into full-time home office. And so we spent a lot of time working with each of the employees to work out how is it for them at home. One of the colleagues mentioned to ask the question, how are you feeling, not how you're doing. So how are you feeling? How's the setup? Is there anything that we can do to support that? We have lots of young parents, so parents of young children. We also, from the first lockdown that we had, we said to them, please use the calendar, use the company calendar to put in when you're meant to be looking after the kids, or you have to do the homeschooling, because if you put it in the calendar, then we know that we won't bother you at that time. And I think it's also one of the colleagues mentioned, the times that people work, you do have to become more flexible. I mean, we were flexible in the beginning, but your office hours actually changes, where we say, okay, it's fine that we know that between 12 and 4, you have to cope with the kids. So we won't invite you to any meetings. We won't bother you if you have it in the calendar. And then that person would feel fine jumping on at 10 o'clock at night when the kids are asleep and they've got time to relax. And it wasn't coming from the company. So it's about them having the ability to manage their time in terms of what works for them. Something else that I'm about to introduce into our organization, and we did it at my last company, was it got filters down from the changing human resources branding to people or people and culture organization, that office administrator or office manager is actually changed the title to employee experience officer, employee experience associate. And that also then shows that the company is really serious about this. And it also brings in, I think you were saying it, Meena, before, that it's also about, you know, is payroll going well? Is the office, like, if we need toilet paper in the toilet at the time, is it always there? It's little things like that that are also part of the employee experience. So, you know, even the title and the brand of office administrator or office manager, everyone thinks, oh, that's the secretary. So it's kind of changing the branding of that as well.
Yeah, no, loads of really good ideas. Thank you, Liz. And language matters.
Yeah.
It certainly does.
So let's kind of move on to tech then. So what are some of the kind of tech enablers that our audience should be thinking about?
Oh, well, I'll talk about some of the tech stuff, but I can also talk about some other things that we've done.
Yeah, great.
For example, I'll speak specifically about our German office, but it's kind of replicated across the world. In Germany, for example, we delivered fruit once a month to people's homes, because when they were in the office, they did like having fruits and kind of focusing on the well-being of people. We also offered the COVID vaccine. So we worked with the government, and people can actually sign up through the company and go and get vaccinated. We sorted that out. And when you're on site, we set up a testing environment where you can get tested. We've also done things like giving people an hour in a day where they can just come together, like a coffee machine moment, where they can just come, not talk about work, and just hang out and have their lunch and just really just talk about everything else but work. And there's like a monitor that kind of make sure you're not talking about work or a project. You're just talking about how was your weekend, where's your next holiday. There's a lot of things like that we've done. We've also kind of worked with people to understand what they need at home. So some people have asked for monitors to be delivered to their home. Some people have asked for their company chair to be delivered to their home. So we've done all those things to kind of focus really on the well-being of the individual, no matter where they're actually working. So those are some of the things we've done.
Yeah, loads of great ideas. Anyone else? Manoj, Sanjay?
Yeah, no, maybe I can just add that, of course, you know, over the last, given that we are a technology company, thankfully we do have a lot of tools, you know, at our disposal always to kind of strengthen that. But also I think the whole focus on well-being, right? I mean, for us, I think it's been a journey throughout the whole year where we've been in touch, you know, with the employees, and also we've extended, be it counseling, you know, programs for the families as well, not just for the employee, but anybody wanting to speak if, you know, they have a well-being issue or anything around that. So providing opportunities and spaces, you know, for the employees there. And again, this whole psychological safety aspect, we want to extend that not just to the employees, but also to the families as well, because we know the fact that, you know, it's very tough working from home. For example, I mean, my own example, I was flying out every other week, you know, before COVID. And you know, and suddenly I was brought to a halt, right? So I had to be in my home and, you know, kind of not travel, meet customers, and all of that. So it does take a toll. So it does take that time. So how do you kind of guide and, you know, engage your employees through that process? Because not everybody knows this, right? And how to deal with that. So I think being there definitely helps. And somebody was asking in the chat about how have the
performance management systems, yeah.
So look, I think for us in Nokia, we've thankfully had this whole model of not having an end of the year thing, you know, rating system and all that. So we've adopted a more frequent approach, which we call 1 in 90 dialogue. We call it a dialogue more than an assessment. And then we do that periodically. And the aspects that we look at is not just performance. It's about performance, well-being, development, all the aspects together. And thankfully that continues, right? And probably it's happening 1 in 60 or 30 now. But the idea is we keep that rigor going, right? And be in touch with the employees. And of course, the reward and all of that, one of the things for us is our core principles. So there are just 3 things that now, with a renewed sense of purpose, once our new CEOs come, it's about being open, being empowered, and being fearless, right? So these 3 things that, you know, as our core, you know, platform, we call it, is something that we encourage everybody to have. being fearless is sometimes misunderstood, but it's more to say that don't fear if you have, anything that you would like to express. Or so I think for us, living those is very important, and kind of providing people those spaces, and the needed tools and technologies around it is the way to go about it. So yeah. Thank
you, Manoj. Keith, I don't know if that answers your questions. If you could just let us know in the chat, or come in and take yourself on mute or whatever. We'll come back to you. Sorry, go ahead, Keith. Did that answer your question?
Not quite.
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
I just wanted to know, how has it affected the way in which people's performance is being appraised in organizations nowadays? We used to have the standard annual or biannual kind of appraisal, and you had KRAs and targets and so on. Now, I guess that whole system must have got, quite topsy-turvy now as a result of all these things that have been happening. So how do managements appraise the performance of employees, and how do they reward performance?
Yeah, maybe just to build on Keith. So I don't think fundamentally, things have changed in the terms of how, your objective setting is done. I think the how part of it has changed, right? So for me, it's not the what of, what, of course, there are objectives at the end of the year you've got to meet, but I think the how part of how that's been executed has probably evolved. And like I was saying, instead of having the end of the year or end of 6 months, you're doing it more frequently, and not with the intention of only looking at it from a performance, but saying, how can we help together, working with the employee, to achieve that end goal? Because I think we're almost breaking that notion of saying, oh, you are expected to do that, and I want you to get that done, rather than saying, how can we do this together in shaping the end outcome in partnership, right? So for me, that whole employee organizational congruence is so critical, right? Because I think that's something which I see more and more coming together. It's not a disjointed activity saying expectations out there, your task is this and all that. So I think it's getting a lot more inclusive. So that for me, the approach of the engagement is changing, not necessarily the objective. I think the business objectives are still there. So they will be there at the end of the day, businesses need to thrive. But how to get there is the evolution that I'm seeing. And also, we're not seeing typically any change in the reward. I think it's very important to be open, right? For example, if a company is going through a tough time, I think it's important to be open in terms of saying, look, this is the reality. Be authentic. I think being authentic is the key in this whole process. You can't just tell somebody that, oh yes, I will try and give you some appraisal at the end of so. Be authentic and open upfront. Let them embrace the challenges, know the reality, and then build forward on that together, right? So I think that journey is kind of shaping up a lot more than just the end objective. I think the end objectives will always be around. Yeah.
Liz, I can see you're itching to kind of get in there.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce everything Manoj says we also have in place, and it's exactly the same. I think I wrote in the message now to say that it's the process itself hasn't changed. It's the how it's being delivered. So before COVID, we also had, like as I mentioned, we have the recommended of quarterly, starting from onboarding already, and it's up to the teams to do it as often as they want, or as within that year, what works for them. In addition to that, we also had from day one team lead one-on-ones with their team members. And that's up to the team member and the team lead to decide, is it weekly or is it bi-monthly? It has to happen at least once every 2 weeks. And everyone does that. There's no having to remind everyone. And that was always, when we could be all in the office, it was always done face-to-face, and usually going for a walk outside or let's go grab a coffee together. And so, as Manoj said, it's a dialogue. So it's not about saying, okay, have you achieved this, or are you achieving this? What are you doing? Are you meeting the project deliverables? No, it's about having conversation and integrating the whole, how's it going? How are you feeling with how the whole work thing is? So it's having the one dialogue and not a separate one on what the goals are versus how you're feeling as a person. And I think that's a big part of the employee experience as well, to say that it should be integrated into sort of such a big part of our life we spend, or so much of our life we spend at the workplace. So I think it's good to integrate the two.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Manoj, and Keith, thanks for the question. So I know we've only got a few minutes left. I just wanted to give the speakers an opportunity to just give maybe one piece of advice and guidance for the participants on the call. So if you're thinking about employee experience or if you're implementing it, what's your one piece of advice? So Sanjay, since you started us off, maybe we should start with you. What's your one piece of advice for the participants?
Do it only if you believe in it.
Love it.
Don't ape it.
Love it. Manoj. So you don't go last this time. So
yeah, look, thanks for that. So no, I would just say, just be authentic and kind of link it to the purpose, right? I mean, because anything that you do otherwise will be seen as not being effective and people not embrace it. So just be authentic, stick to the purpose of the organization, and make sure it's driven that way. So yeah.
Okay, thanks, Manoj. Iyas? Yes.
Can you hear me?
Can.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had trouble of hearing you guys for a couple of minutes. I think I lost you.
Oh, okay. I was just one piece of advice for the participants on if they were thinking about employee experience or implementing it, what would that be?
Well, to look at it holistically, to look at it to take into context, into consideration, it's really important to be fair with employees. It's important to look at their profiles. For me, what you need to find the way to ignite this enthusiasm within employees. We look at their intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Each and every employee is different. So these things, so even if you have to create personalized journeys within certain context, that will be really, really excellent. I understand in big organizations, including ours, this is quite challenging, but it's doable.
Cool, thank you. Sola, your one piece of advice.
Yeah, my one piece of advice is to remember why we're doing this, right? There's a business imperative, right? There's a business imperative, and depending on where you are in your organization, employee experience becomes an add-on or an enabler or an addition. So I think remember the key reason why you're doing this: keep the business focus, establish your culture, and be brave. Would be my advice.
Love it, thank you. Liz, the final word with you. Your one piece of advice.
To make sure that your top management and board are aligned with what you want to, what the definition is of employee experience for that company, and that they believe in it, that they're aligned in it, that they're supporting it, that they're walking the talk every day.
Yeah, totally. All starts there, doesn't it?
It does. And as I said before, to be brave enough in as a HR professional, as a people professional, to challenge them if you're not seeing it, to say, unless they're there, it's not worth moving forward with the initiatives at a lower level. Absolutely.
Well, thank you everyone for thank you to all the panelists and the participants. I'm sure Ashish is going to help us close the session.
Yes, thank you, Meena, for a great moderation and lot of views coming and all. Yes, we are not on the time. Did talk about a lot of things, and I don't want to just summarize those because we have already heard. But yes, I was also tempting to share something, like the way we have moved from employee engagement to employee experience. For HR, it became more of family experience in COVID, because people are working from home, and you see, more than employee actually. So it became more of family experience. As far as anything we need to design, that keep it in mind, it is to be for the family. Yes, that's one of the things I like to share. Good point, like Manoj said, instead of asking how are you doing, how are you feeling, very good. This all depend upon people what they share and all. Treat employee as a customer. And Meena, you're from banking industry, you must have seen that banking sales and marketing people, they always think that they provide the best experience to the customer when they meet us and for anything, so I can think about, the banking, I can think about the hospital, movies, virtual platform. We always think, okay, how was our experience? And if you meet anyone, you never ask actually, how was your engagement? How was your experience? And it has a meaning actually then. It has a meaning. I don't know why we never thought about it. Suddenly in the last 2 years, this experience became a buzzword, and it is working well as well. Yeah. Manoj, customer onboarding is one of the things, is very much important. Like in the business, it's the same way. Employee experience also important in organization and HR. Thank you so much, all of you joining from different places. This was the Euro 2021 experience session for us. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay, Muthal, Kalinga University, and the Kontempore. We look forward to have you in another session next month. Wish you all the best and have a great evening, great night, or afternoon, whichever time zone you are into.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.
Stay safe. Good luck.
Bye.